We're back in the book of Daniel. We're going to look at these four kingdoms of world history. And these are main four that we see here in the book of Daniel that really stick out. And it stretches from Babylon, and it goes all the way up into the Roman Empire. And then it will come down right up into the USA's time and prophecy. We're going to see that here shortly. Probably won't see that till the next video, but we're going to get right into this. So we're in the book of Daniel, and this is going to open up the book of Revelation, especially chapter 13 and onwards. So it's incredible. So now, the last video we went through Daniel 2. We went through the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. Okay, it was a statue of that great big metal man. You know, the head of gold, the chest and arms of silver, the belly and thighs of brass, then the great legs of iron, and then what were the feet? The feet and toes. Remember, the iron continued down into the feet. So it was part Roman, but it was also part clay. And clay is a symbol for God's people. He is the potter, we are the clay. Okay? So we see there's the Roman church in that feet. The Roman Catholic Church. The mixture, it's the church and state. It's incredible. But those first four kingdoms is what we're going to talk about. And Daniel chapter 7 is going to give us more information on who these four are. And we're going to go beyond. So let's go right into Daniel chapter 7. And we're going to start here. We'll just start in verse 1. It says, "In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spoke and said, I saw in my vision by night." So he had a dream at bedtime. "And behold, the four winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea." And look at verse 3. It says, "And the four great beasts came up from the sea, different one from another." Okay? Now, and this is, I was talking to somebody else about this. The beasts, anytime you see a beast, we've already established that a beast is symbolic for a kingdom, a nation, a country, a government. Okay, it's a kingdom. Okay? Now, these are four great beasts that came up out of the sea. Now, do you guys know what the sea represents? So it would be a kingdom that comes up out of the sea. Well, let's go to Revelation 17:15 and read that real quick. Notice this, it says, "And he said to me, the waters which thou sawest," remember the water, the sea, okay, "where the whore sits, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues." So that's what the water represents. The sea, it'd be a sea of people. It would be multitudes, nations, tongues, peoples. Like America right now would be a great sea of people. Because, you see what I'm saying? So a beast coming up out of the sea is a beast, a kingdom that's coming up in a high populated area with many people and nations and tongues and multitudes. So that's what the water, it just represents people, the ruling people. And it makes sense, because if we see think yourself at a concert and you look out into the audience and you see all these people, right? These like 1 million people. You would say to yourself, that's a sea of people. You know what I mean? That's where that expression comes from, probably. So, okay, so now verses 4, we're going to go one by one and look at these four kingdoms, okay? Because it's the same kingdoms that are in the statue, the dream, the gold, silver, brass, and iron. It's the same kingdoms, okay? It's just going to give us more detail. Verse 4 says, "The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man's heart was given to it." That's the kingdom of Babylon. And we're going to get into that in a minute. I just wanted to show you these four. And then it says, "And behold, another beast, or another kingdom, a second like to a bear. And it raised up itself on one side. And it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus, Arise, devour much flesh." Okay, so we got a lion as a symbol and a bear. Okay, these are very key because Revelation is going to talk about these. Verse 6, after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. So this beast, this kingdom, had 4 wings, and it had 4 heads. We're going to get into that shortly. Verse 7, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast. Now notice that he doesn't give an animal to this beast, but later we're going to find out what animal this is. Dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. It had great iron teeth, and it devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue, stamped the remnant of God's people with the feet of it. And it was different from all the beasts that were before it. So it was different than all the other ones. And it had 10 horns. You guys, I've been through this so much. I know this is the Roman Empire. This is the Iron Monarchy of Rome. And see those 10 horns? Okay, these 10 horns came out of Rome. This is by 476. Rome divided. Remember, we talked about this. It divided up into 4 separate kingdoms that rose up. And, Rome was never conquered. It was divided. And it changed, okay? That's what those 10 horns are. Those are 10 littler kingdoms, okay? And that's key because that's in Revelation 2. And then now notice this now. Actually, before we continue, I'm just going to read this verse and then we're going to go back to, I have some notes I want to go over. But it says here, I considered the horns. So Daniel considered these 10 horns, these 10 kingdoms. And behold, there came up among them another little horn. This little horn came up among the 10. It rose up among those 10 governments, you guys, those 10 kingdoms. And notice this, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn, now check this out, you guys, 3 of those 10 horns were plucked up, meaning genocide, meaning that all the people were killed, and we're going to find out why later. But this little horn right here, this is the Roman Catholic Church. This is the iron and the clay right here. Part of the iron and the clay, there's more. This is the church-state union that rose up among those Roman 10 governments. And Rome, the church, used the other horns to pluck up 3 of these horns, you guys. 3 of these kingdoms. They were the Ostrogoths, the Vandals, and I'm not sure who the third one. I don't think it was the Heruli. Anyways, 3 of them did get plucked up. Okay. But notice how it ends. It says, in this horn, okay, were eyes like the eyes of a man. That's because there's a pope at the head of this system, this Roman church. It's the eyes of a man. And a mouth speaking great things. The pope had a mouth, and he spoke great things against the God of heaven. And we all know this, or we should know this as we study this. It's incredible. He spoke great things and blasphemies we're going to read about in Revelation. And he did that during the Dark Ages, the Pope. It's the office of the Pope, because there's always one Pope. One will leave, but then another will step in his place. Like right now we have Pope Francis. So, let's go back to Daniel 2, because I made a bunch of notes that I want to go over with you guys. We're going to look. So we got the four kingdoms. We got the bear, or the lion, the bear, the leopard, and then that 4th one, there was no animal. It just said it was great and terrible and exceedingly dreadful. We're going to find out that it's actually a dragon from the book of Revelation, but we'll get into that later. It's Rome embodied the character of Satan more than any of the other kingdoms, because they hated God's people. They killed them and tortured them and burned them at the stake, and they're the ones that killed Jesus, and they especially hated God's people because Satan was working through them more probably than all the other ones. And then eventually it went into the Roman Catholic Church, was its next phase of existence. And it still lasts today, just like Jesus says it would last all the way up until the second coming. That's why the Catholic Church is still here today. Okay, so now, so this head of fine gold, this first kingdom that we read about, you guys, that's Babylon, right? Well, we also know that it was talked about as being the lion that had wings, and it was made to stand up like a man in a man's heart. So check this out. In Daniel 7, Daniel 7:3 we just read. Hold on. No, it was Daniel 7:4. Yeah, right here. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. This is Babylon. It's the same kingdom, okay? The wings were plucked up, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on his feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. That's a key detail. So one of these kingdoms is going to have something happen where an animal and a man's heart, okay? We're going to see something like this. Do we see something like this? Well, lo and behold, we do. If we go to Daniel 4, in Daniel chapter 4, check this out, talking about Nebuchadnezzar, this happened. It said, let his heart be changed from a man's, and let a beast's heart be given unto him, and let 7 times or 7 years pass over him. Nebuchadnezzar was given the heart of a beast, and he had to live as an animal for 7 years because he would not acknowledge. He was a very prideful and selfish man. And you can read chapter 4 to find out what happens, but at the end of the verse here, in verse 34, it says, and at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up my eyes unto heaven, and my understanding returned to me. Okay, for 7 years, his mind was taken, and he had the mind of a beast. Well, his mind, his understanding, it returned to him after 7 years. Okay, and it says, what did he do? And I blessed the Most High, and praised and honored him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. So that happened to Nebuchadnezzar. So that's why the description was like that. It's to let us know that it was Babylon. It's the same beast that it's talking about, just giving us a little bit more. Okay, so now the second beast in Daniel 7:5, we'll go over it one more time. It was the beast, it was the bear, and this bear was raised up on one side. So one side was up higher than the other. Okay, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth. This is the Medo-Persia. This is the chest and arms of silver. It's the same. It's that second kingdom in succession. Okay. And now Medo-Persia, the 3 ribs in its mouth were the 3 kingdoms that they plucked up. Babylon, Syria, was it Egypt? I can't remember the 3. I'd have to study my history a little bit better, but there were 3 kingdoms that they plucked up. And the reason, you guys want to know why it was higher on one side? It's because it was the Medo-Persian Empire. It was the Medes and the Persians. It was like 2 kingdoms in one. Kind of like, yeah, so, and the Persians were much stronger than the Medes. The Medes eventually pretty much died off, and it became the Persian Empire. So that's why it was raised up on one side. That's so cool. And if you guys, later we can go to Daniel chapter 8 in the next video, and we can see that Medo-Persia, there's another animal. It's right here. Then I lifted up my eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before me the river, a ram which had 2 horns. Okay, this is also Medo-Persia. It's the ram with 2 horns. Kind of like the USA, like the lamb that had 2 horns. Okay? And the 2 horns were high, but check this out. But one was higher than the other, and the other came up last. So just like a bear was raised up on one side, this ram had 2 horns, but one horn was higher than the other. It's because the Persians were much stronger than the Medes. Isn't that cool? That's pretty cool. And then if we look in Daniel chapter 8:20, just in case you're confused, it tells us, it says, the angel told Daniel, he says, the ram which thou saw having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. So just in case somebody's confused, it reveals to us that yes, the ram with two horns, which is the bear that's raised up, also the silver in the image, it's the kings of Media and Persia. There were two kings, the king of the Medes and the king of the Persians. Like I said, it was like a 2-in-1 empire. So we know who that second one is, okay? And there's more detail. We're just kind of doing a rough walkthrough with these. Okay, now the third kingdom. This would be the belly and thighs of brass in the image. Okay. Now we'll review Daniel 7:6. We already went over this, but this is the leopard beast. This is that third beast. Okay. Now remember this one, you guys. It had 4 wings of a fowl, and it had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. It bared rule over all the earth, because this is Greece. It's the same kingdom. This is the kingdom of Greece. Okay. And now we're going to note that those 4 heads are 4 kingdoms. After Alexander the Great died, his kingdom was left to his 4 generals, and they divided up the land. So those 4 heads are his 4 generals that Greece broke up into after he died. Their names are Cassander, Lysimachus, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. And we'll get into more of that later too. But they're in Daniel chapter 8 along with Medo-Persia, because they're the ones that conquered Medo-Persia. If we look here at, well, just let me show you Daniel 8:5. This is Greece. Now notice this. It says, and I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west. Look at this he-goat. This is Greece. It's another symbol. And on the face of the whole earth. Now notice this, and touched not the ground. This he-goat was moving so fast, it was flying. It did not touch the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Okay? The notable horn between his eyes, you guys, that's Alexander the Great. I bet you guys didn't know he was in the Bible, eh? Isn't that pretty cool? And he was moving so fast he didn't touch the ground. It's because Alexander the Great ruled the world, the known world, in like a 7 or 8 year period. It was so fast. And he died young too, at like 32, 33 years old. But he ruled he was like a military prodigy. He ruled everything so swiftly. That's why this he-goat's moving so fast. Pretty cool. So I call that the brass leopard. But then if we go to Daniel 8:8, it says, therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, Alexander the Great, the great horn was broken. He died very young, Alexander. He was broken. And for it, now notice this, came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. Remember we talked about 4 generals is what his kingdom divided up into when he died. These are these 4 horns talked about right here. And just in case somebody's confused and being like, well, that's not Greece, go to Daniel 8:21 and 22. In that same chapter, it says here, and the rough goat is the king of Greece. Okay, that's Alexander the Great. Okay, it's the kingdom of Greece. That's what the he-goat was. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. That's Alexander the Great. You guys, the first king of Greece right there. Okay, now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. Okay? They were separate ruling powers. They were his generals and his army. Okay, so we see those 4 heads, those 4 wings that it had, are the 4 generals that when Alexander the Great died, his kingdom divided up up unto his 4 generals. So I just thought that's pretty cool to notice those things. But it shows us, just like it said, the kings of Medo-Persia, the kings of Greece, it tells us, it reveals it to us, the answer, so we don't have to guess on these things. So if somebody tries to come to tell you and say, yeah, well, That bear, that's Russia, and the he-goat, that's whatever they're going to, you can say, well, no, the Bible tells us that it's this, and it's this, and it's this, and we just have to go through and study it. So, those are the three. Now, the fourth kingdom, I call it the Iron Dragon, okay? There is a lot of information in the Bible about this one, because this is the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire is much more than just the Roman Empire, because 10 horns grew up, okay, when it was divided. But then it didn't stop there. Then a little horn grew up among them. And that little horn changed from the Roman Empire to the Holy Roman Empire. And this is where the Roman Catholic Church comes into prophecy. The Antichrist, the whore, Babylon, Jezebel, whatever you want to call her. So, and she's with us to this very day, because Jesus said the iron is going to last up until the end. The iron and the clay. So, we're going to go over this iron. This will be the final one we look at in this video. In the next video, we're going to go further. And soon we're going to be in Revelation. So, alright, let's check this out. In Daniel 7:7-8, we'll review what we already read. I'm just going to kind of roughly go through this. Okay, I saw in the night visions a fourth beast, and we already know that's the fourth kingdom. That's Rome, the iron monarchy of Rome. Dreadful and terrible. Okay, it stamped the remnant of God's people, the remnant, with the feet of it, and it was different from all the other ones that were before it. Now this one had 10 horns, and we know that those 10 horns, 476 AD, right around that time, is when Rome, it kind of fell apart, and it divided up into those 10 kingdoms, those 10 horns. And then I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them, among those 10 horns, those Roman states, okay, came up a little horn. This is the Roman church state. The Catholic Church came up among them, okay? And 508 is when they were set up, the abomination of desolation. And then by 538, they had full power of all the states, and they ran unopposed throughout the Dark Ages. Okay. And we already went through, he had the eyes of a man, because there's a pope at the head of this, and a mouth speaking great things. We're going to see all this in Revelation when we get to it later. But there's more about this fourth beast. Let's look in... Oh, this is cool, guys. If we go to a couple verses after that, notice this. This is right around the time of the judgment. It says, I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horns spake. That's the papacy. I beheld even to the beast was slain. You guys, the beast was slain. That's the deadly wound right there. Because Napoleon went in and slayed the beast. Took away state power away from the Pope. That's the deadly wound. Yeah. And we know that occurred in 1798. Okay, and his body was destroyed and given to the burning flame. Because we know in 1844, that's the judgment. That's when Jesus went into the most holy place. So that's just pretty cool. When I saw the deadly wound in that verse, I was shocked because I didn't know it was there. And we'll pull up Revelation. We're going to go deeper next time. I want to finish these kingdoms here. Okay, more about that fourth kingdom. If we go to Daniel 7, let's look. Daniel 7, we're going to go from 19 to 21 verses. Okay, and it says, Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was different from all the others. Okay, it was exceedingly dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the remnant with his feet, or the residue with his feet. It's another word for remnant. God's people, the leftover seed. And of the 10 horns. So it's going to talk more about the 10 horns that were in his head. You see that? This beast in his head, he grew 10 horns, because that's the Roman Empire. The dragon grew 10 horns. Revelation's going to talk about this, you guys. It's important that we know this. Okay? And of the other, this is that little horn, which came up, and before whom 3 fell. Remember, 3 were plucked up. 3 of those 10 kingdoms are gone, so it left only 7 to rule throughout the Dark Ages. Even of that horn that had eyes, Pope, and a mouth speaking great, very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them. This little horn, this papacy, the Pope, the Roman Church, they're the ones that made war against the saints. You guys, from 538 to 1798, for that 42 months, okay, 1,260 days, years of the Dark Ages, it's estimated between 50 to 100 to some say more than 100 million people died. God's people, Christians, because they wanted to believe the Bible. And the Pope, they dictate their law, and they make people worship on Sunday. They change God's Sabbath, and they try to force people to believe in the Trinity, and they make it laws. And if you don't, then they're going to kill you. You know, they're going to persecute you. They're going to put you in prison. They're going to take away everything. That's what they did for 1,260 years. You can look up that in 538, the Justinian decree that went out, and it said that nobody's allowed to talk bad about the Trinity, and that, I forget what it says, but you guys, if you can look that up and study that. It's the Justinian Code, I think it was, of 538. No one was to dare publicly oppose the papacy, because they believe that they're infallible. Whatever they speak cannot be changed. They're the ones that changed Saturday to Sunday. They changed God's Sabbath. And many other things. They teach all the false teachings and of the traditions, and they've taken all the pagan beliefs and they've brought it into the Christian church. See, Sunday was a day that the Roman Empire, Constantine, around that time, a Sunday was a festival. It was a day to celebrate the sun. Okay, that's why we call it Sunday. Well, the Pope looked at that and said, well, we're going to change that we're going to change the Sabbath. So instead of Saturday, we're going to bring Sunday into the church. So they brought that into the church. And that's where it comes from. That's why Christians, everybody that goes to church on Sunday today, all Protestants that do this, are doing this because the Pope changed it. So they're giving their worship to the beast. It's incredible, and so many people don't even know. But isn't that amazing? I never knew any of this stuff until I started reading the Bible and studying it. So, and we'll get into more of that in depth later. I don't have a lot of references to give you, but we'll have more later. But there's a couple more verses I wanted to go over. Now, in Daniel 7, a couple verses later, let's go to verses 23 to 26. Thus he said, the fourth beast, this is where we're still dealing with the Roman Empire, shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth. We've already established that. Which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth. The Roman Empire, they've devoured the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom, okay, we've already established what those are 10 kings that shall arise. You see, so if somebody says, well, those 10 horns, no, they're not 10 kingdoms. Well, yes, they are. They're 10 kings that shall arise. And another shall arise after them. That's the Pope, the papacy, the Catholic Church. And he shall be different from the first. And he shall subdue 3 kings. Because remember, 3 of the horns are plucked up. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. He did this during the Dark Ages, you guys. And think to change times and laws. Not only has he changed God's law, he's changed the 10 Commandments, he's changed the Sabbath, he's changed all those things. And they shall be given into his hand. So that they were given into his hand. He was allowed to kill them for 1260 years. Now notice this, you guys, until a time and times and the dividing of time. That's the dark ages right there. A time is 1 year, a times is 2 years, and the dividing of time is a half a year. So that would be 3.5 years right there. Well, 3.5 years is how many days? 1,260 days. And if you go a day for a year, that would be 1,260 years. Isn't that amazing? 42 months, you guys. 42 months right there. So from 538 to 1798, exactly 1,260 years. The saints were given into his hand so he could kill them and persecute them. But then Napoleon came and the beast was slain in 1798. And all civil power was taken away from the Catholic Church. Isn't this amazing? But then what happened, you guys? In 2015, the Pope came to America, petitioned our Constitution, our Congress, and the United Nations raised their flag in 2015 to let the whole world know that the civil powers of this world are back with the papacy. They're giving them power again. Because God knew that's the deadly wound being healed. The Pope is going to have power over the state once again. And they're going to dictate religious law to all the people on the earth. And they're going to force everybody to worship on Sunday. That's the mark of the beast. It's fascinating, man. It's so fun to study it, though, you know. So that time, times, and half a time, that's the dark ages, okay? And they shall take away his dominion to consume it and to destroy it until the end. Okay, so we went over a lot of information in this video, but it's all, you know, check this stuff out for yourself, you guys, because it's so fascinating to learn these things. But next video, now that we got the kingdoms established of what everything is, we're going to jump into Revelation 12 and 13. That'll be the next video, because we're going to need a whole video just for that. But there's something else I wanted to mention to you guys. Let's look, before we leave, let's look in Daniel 8. Daniel 8 says a few things about Rome too. And out of one of them came forth a little horn. Okay, this is the papacy right here. Which waxed exceeding great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. That's Jerusalem. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven. And it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground. That's funny. You know, it's funny. Revelation 12, 3 or 4, the dragon cast a third of the stars to the ground. 1/3 of all the angels of heaven fell because Satan tricked them and deceived them. And stamped upon them. Yeah, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host. That's got to be Jesus. And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away. I don't know what the daily is. I think the daily has something to do with paganism. Something to do with that paganism, that switch from pagan to papal Rome. Kind of that switch that happened from the Roman Empire to the Holy Roman Empire. That transition. But the daily was taken away. And notice this. And the place of his sanctuary was cast down. And a host was given to him against the daily paganism by reason of transgression. And it cast down the truth to the ground. That's what the papacy does. They cast the truth to the ground and they believe in paganism and traditions and their own theories and all that stuff. And it practiced and prospered during the Dark Ages. It was basically the only church on the earth until the Protestant Reformation, till the daughters started coming out. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? To give the sanctuary and the host, that's got to be the people of God. because the papacy made war with the saints for the Dark Ages. He killed them and persecuted them for 1260 years. But notice what he says. How long? And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days. Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Now, the only thing I know about this right now, that 2,300, and we'll get more into this later, I don't know how to convey this. But the 2,300 from my studies that I've seen stretches from 457 BC. That's when the commandment to restore Jerusalem, to rebuild and restore Jerusalem by Artaxerxes. And that's when they went and they finished building the city, Jerusalem, back up, all the way to 1844. That's when October 22nd, that's when the Advent people and the Millerites, that's when they thought Jesus was coming back. But in fact, he actually moved into the most holy place. But if you go from 457 to 1844, that's exactly 2,300 years. And I believe that's the 2,300 days, the 2,300 year prophecy. I'll get into more of that later. I got to study that and get more clear on the details on that. But at that time, the sanctuary is going to be cleansed, you guys. So in 1844, because we know Jesus entered the most holy place to perform judgment. So him and the Father's on the throne, and Jesus is mediating on our behalf. Okay, in the most holy place, in front of the Ark of the Covenant. And that's when the cleansing's been taking place. All the dead are going to be judged, and then all the living are going to be judged before Jesus comes back. Because remember, the church is judged first. God's people are judged first. So everybody that's in this first judgment is everybody that's ever professed to be a believer in God are taking place in this judgment. So just like Jesus says, when he returns, his reward is with him, because judgment's already been taking place. So anyways, there's a lot there. There's a lot there. I'll put a couple verses on the screen throughout the video, but yeah, there's a lot there, and I need to be clear on a couple spots here, and I need to put this together a little bit better. But I'm going to study deeper, and I'm going to continue going. And I hope you guys hope that was good. We will pick up the next video, and we're going to open up Revelation and connect these kingdoms that we see in Daniel. We're going to see where they start to show up in the book of Revelation. So we'll continue looking at these prophecies. I like to call it the timeline, from Babylon to the UN, or until the second coming, from Babylon to the second coming. So, all right, you guys, God bless. May the Lord be with you, and may he send you the spirit of his Son into your hearts. All right, God bless, and we'll see you next video.